Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 26, 2023 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who is our third member. Over on the side table in the front, we have John Everts, who is our township engineer, and Wendy McKenna, who is here representing our solicitor tonight. On the back table, we have Sean Halbum, our township manager, and Amanda Lafty, who is our assistant township manager. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This meeting is being video recorded for future broadcast. Also, the Board of Supervisors held an executive session on July 13th to discuss real estate. No decisions were made at that meeting.
Thank you, Sean. First item on our agenda is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Seeing none, I will move forward, and we'll start with our official action items. First item is our consent agenda. First and foremost, board members. Does any board member wish to remove any items from our consent agenda tonight?
No.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda and pay the bills for the June 2023 at $459,145.41.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is Resolution 2023-15. Wendy, I believe this is you. Hang on one second. If you do me a favor and turn on your mic and make sure you pull that down in front of you so we get you on the recording.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Resolution 2023-15 and 2023-16 are related, so I think we could probably do them together. They are resolutions with regard to the Valley Forge Road Corridor project. They pertain to property owned by John and Mary Louise Graham. The two tax parcel numbers are listed on the agenda, and these are necessary in order to do execute documents in lieu of condemnation. And the reason that we're doing that is because these properties are in Act 319. So in prior times, you folks have done this by motion, but because these properties are in Act 319, we need to do a resolution authorizing basically what we call a friendly condemnation. So these are for temporary construction easements with regard to the first resolution 2023-15, and then resolution 2023-16 is with regard to a deed of dedication for right-of-way, a stormwater management facilities easement, and a temporary construction easement.
So Wendy, for the benefit of the recording and our audience, could you just maybe explain what Act 319, like why that we're doing it via this way?
Sure. So these properties are in Act 319, which is basically like the farmland preservation, where their real estate taxes are at a reduced rate because they are in the Act 319 program. We are doing this by eminent domain in lieu of condemnation, so that they do not lose their Act 319 status and that their real estate taxes aren't affected adversely.
Thank you, Wendy. So folks, these two parcels were part of farmland preservation in the 2000s, ultimately is what she's referencing in terms of Act 319. And so as you say, a friendly condemnation, folks who have attended other meetings, there are several items with the Valley Forge corridor project that we've been working through, and these are just 2 additional properties that are part of that overall project.
That's correct.
Okay. Any board members have any questions for Wendy?
I think it's formality, and the amount of property is insignificant. It's
Correct.
more of just moving forward with this project. So I'll make a motion, other than Steve. Any comment?
Make your motion first.
Make a motion to approve the resolution 2023-15 and also 2023-16 for the Valley Forge Corridor project.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motions pass, or resolutions pass, I should say. Next up, we have a motion. It's going to be a motion to authorize execution by the Township of the Valley Forge Corridor deeds and dedication and temporary construction easements signed by Natural Lands Trust.
And actually, that one, we're going to table this evening, gentlemen. We are waiting for the Montgomery County Conservation District approval, so we're going to hold off on and table that this evening. And it'll come back on an agenda when we're ready to move ahead with that.
Fair enough. Moving forward, we move up to another motion. We're going to stay on you, Wendy. I'm now understanding
I'm the
why
only
why
one that's
Bob
gets to
didn't come
talk.
tonight, you know. So the next item is going to be a motion to enter into settlement for tax assessment appeals for the following addresses. It's going to be 3415 Germantown Pike and 3008 Germantown Pike. And Wendy, the floor is yours again.
Sure. So these are 2 tax assessment appeals that have, and a settlement has been negotiated with the school district, the county, and the property owners. The first one regarding 3415 Germantown Pike, which is owned by Christina Marie, Inc., will result in a refund issued by the township in the amount of $1.29. The second one, 3008 Property Holdings LLC, which is 3008 Germantown Pike. The refund to be issued by the township will be $15.38. So we would need a motion to enter into the settlement agreements for those 2 properties.
Got it. Any questions, anybody? I know we've done these regularly when there's an assessment adjustment. Our small portion just needs to sort of participate with the other components of tax appeal.
I have no questions. Steve? I'll make a motion for the settlement for the tax assessment for the Christina Marie, Inc., 3415 Germantown Pike, and the 3008 Property Holding 3008 Germantown Pike.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we're going to have a motion to authorize execution of an agreement of sale for the potential purchase of property. Before we actually have the motion, we're going to have a short presentation from Jim Thompson regarding the property in question.
Well, good evening, everyone.
So I'm going to ask you to sit down, Jim, if you don't mind.
Wandering around.
If you're a pacer, then we'll work through that.
Okay.
Make sure we got a green light on,
All right.
a glowing green light.
I'm glowing for sure.
Perfect. Sign it on the sheet, and then if you could just do your best to talk into the microphone so our folks at home can hear you.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And Jim, just let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Sure. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Thompson. I'm the president of the Worcester Historical Society. I've been a board member since 2006. This evening, I just would like to say a few words about the Duchy Church. If you have any questions, I'd be certainly happy to answer them. On the screen up here, we have a picture of the church, which I think every one of you has seen. Everybody get a good view of that? Could we have the next slide, please? Thank you. All right. What is the Duchy Church? Well, Duchy is the word for Deutsch in German. It was built in 1845. It was the fourth church in Worcester, first being the Methacton Mennonite, then Wentz's, then Bethel, and then this one. It was built by German Methodists who were all what they called Albrightists. Jacob Albright was an itinerant minister in Worcester in the early 1800s. An Albright College in Reading is named after him. The structure of the church itself is what they call Teutonic. You had a 30 by 40 foot inside. The walls are 2 feet thick. This particular church never had running water, still doesn't. It has an outhouse out back which functions in case anyone would need to use it. It was very simple. You have the one entrance for women, one entrance for men. It was built on the land donated by Christian and Saren Vonner. And if I could take you back to 1849, because that is the map that we use as a reference for this, the Duchy Church itself was the only building other than the Doak Farm, I don't know who owns it now, on that side of Valley Forge Road from all the way up at Stump Hall to Center Point. Across the street was the Wanner family, and then a little bit down from that you had the Frick family, and both of them were founders of the church. There were basically 5 founders, also the Bruners and some others, and they are all buried in this church. Just as a quick factoid, which you may or may not be aware of, in 1911, the Board of Supervisors voted to pave the Skippack Pike from Center Point to Skippack. And they bought a brand new stone crushing machine, which was the talk of the town. And they hired a fellow by the name of Kibblehouse to run the Frick Quarry. And the Frick Quarry was now located on where the camp is for the kids. I forget the name of it. But the worst industrial accident ever in Worcester took place in 1912 when they were blasting stone to build the road. They made a miscalculation, and Kibblehouse, and of course that's Haynes Kibblehouse later on, his 14-year-old son was killed, and 3 other workers were killed, and 4 were maimed permanently. And that is right across the street from where they were. So the Frick family and the Wanner family are buried in the cemetery there. And maybe we go to the next slide, please. Yep. So the church was constructed 45 to 46. I don't want to say it was purpose-built, but these were abolitionists. And we've had experts go into the church over the years, a lot have volunteered to do it, who are specialists in the Underground Railroad. And there is a trap door, which I'll show you in a second. And they've gone down in there, and they've all agreed that it was purpose-built for running an Underground Railroad, a place where they could hide slaves. But we could never come down with the actual proof that it was ever used for that. What's neat is on the outside, which is right near the front door, is a geodetic seal. And this was put there in 1942. And in 1941 and 42, the U.S. government put these seals all over America where you had a longitude and a latitude come together. And in fact, you can go online and you can find this one. Supposedly, there were 11 of them from Lansdale all the way to Trooper, and this is the only one that still exists. The church itself, in 1961, the congregation was dissolved. In 1966, the building was sold. And in 1978, the property was bought by the Friends of the Worcester Historical Society, in other words, the predecessor of the Worcester Historical Society. Over the years, we have sponsored 7 Eagle Scout projects to maintain this church. Next slide, please. In the cemetery, we have cataloged all the graves. And in fact, if you want, on our website, worcesterhistorical.org, if you go to cemeteries, every cemetery has been cataloged in Worcester as to names, where they're buried, everything, for every cemetery. There are 81 graves there. The oldest stone is 1846. The last burial was in 2017, and this was the cremains of the son of the last minister and his wife, which we did as basically a favor to them. You can't quite see it, but one of the 3 remaining historic trees of Worcester, by historic, I mean by the bicentennial trees of 1976, where they found 18 trees 200 years or older. There are only 3 left, and one of them is right at the other edge of the cemetery. And in this cemetery also, we have the Dutchy oak, which is really pretty neat. This was a gift by Meadowood. They took it comes from an acorn of the Methacton oak, and it was planted in 2010, and it's about 18 feet tall right now, and it's right there on the property. Next slide, please. I mentioned about the Underground Railroad. Let's just move to the next slide. Okay, for those of you who have not been inside, you'll see the trapdoor there, and there's the altar. And again, I want to mention the 30 by 40 foot because that's important, because all the schools, the one-room schools of Worcester built in the late 1800s were also 30 by 40. In other words, it was a blueprint for all kinds of construction at that time. If you've ever seen the Battle of Antietam, in the middle of it was a Dunkard church, same building, which survived today. So you see the trapdoor there. We have had, as I say, specialists go in, crawl around inside. Next slide, please. If you're down in there and you're looking out towards the graveyard, this is where the tunnel went out. Now, again, did anybody ever use it? I'm not really sure, because also at that time, when someone died in the winter, they couldn't dig graves. So they would store the bodies in the bottoms of churches to keep them cold. Now, could that have been used? Maybe it was dual purpose. I mean, they are Germans. You got to figure they're pretty smart people. But this is what it looks like today, the tunnel leading outside. Next slide, please. And this is where it comes out the back, all right, for the exit place. Next slide, please. So this is what I just wanted to show you. This is the Dutchy Church today, and it's been a part of Worcester history forever, literally. And I also want to take this time to thank the Board of Supervisors and the township, because the Historical Society has had a great relationship with you people for forever, going back to when Malcolm Schweiker was the president and things like that. And I just wanted to thank you, take the opportunity to thank you for that. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer them, or maybe I've talked too much already.
Jim, I think you talked just enough. That was exactly the right length and characteristic. Certainly, I appreciated seeing the site. I had been by it like everybody had 1,000 times and had never been on the inside. And I would like to think that it was the Underground Railroad. I like that story.
Me too.
Better than the burying of dead bodies in the winter. So we're going to stick with the Underground Railroad in terms of that. Ultimately, so I'm going to hand it to you, Wendy, so you maybe can give us some of the mechanics, and the board will have a discussion on it, and we might have some more questions for you as well, Jim.
Sure.
Jim, please don't go yet. A couple questions for you. You mentioned the historical value of this building in Worcester. I guess my first question will be, why didn't you come to the Board of Supervisors to tell us about this before the building was offered for sale? And then we lose that history. So,
Yeah, frankly, we have over the years.
What's the time span? I've been sitting here
Well,
for
okay, since
16, 17 years,
no,
and I've never heard.
Well, that's probably as the break point there. In 1978, now I was not involved in this in 1978, but when the Worcester Historical Society was created to celebrate the bicentennial, is why it was, and they wanted to salvage this church, which for 15 years had not been occupied except by so-called hippies and all kinds of people. They thought that if they restored it, that Russell Place, a name you may know, who was the head of the Board of Supervisors, would be willing to have the Worcester adopt the church. And we have that documented, by the way, in minutes. And Russell Place basically turned it down. The only other time that I'm aware of was with Ollie Smith in 2004, and this is before my time, where he approached the township also about taking it over, because by that time it had become a real drain. We're just a little historical society. We don't have funding like Peter Wentz or anything like that. And he was rebuffed on that too. And he went out then and made a big effort with certain wealthy people in Worcester to put a new roof on and do a lot of work. Maybe it was my fault, but see, that's the history that I knew about the township and the Dutchy Church was not necessarily supportive.
Yeah, personally, I'm really disappointed that we had I didn't find out about it until I saw a sign out there, and I had some of the older people that worked with your father on this church. I know he was a caretaker, he was involved, and if something had to be cleaned in the building or get ready for a party, that was your dad. He did that. That was his pride and joy. So I certainly understand the family relationship with that, but you know, and I'm also disappointed in the Friends of Worcester, because I think some of the people serve on both boards, they're involved in that.
We don't have,
Well-
we're not on both boards, so.
Well, I know, but there's some people that commingle with that. Maybe I'll ask that question to Bert later on, but you know, as you sit here and we talk about the people come here and want Worcester, the Board of Supervisors, to buy things because it's history, and once it's gone forever. This is probably one of the premier properties in Worcester with the tunnel below or the marking there for the buildings. That's something that really has true history, and one of the first graveyards of some of the founders of Worcester back in the 1800s. I know we have some other cemeteries that are rather old, but I guess I was somewhat taken back by the lack of communication in this item. And once again, they talked about Ollie Smith back in the early 2000s. We're talking 20 years ago. And in the past 20 years, the Worcester Board of Supervisors has spent an awful lot of money preserving pieces of the ground that have no real reason to be preserved. So we wasted a lot of money, millions of dollars, on people's financial gains. And I could list 15 off the top of my head of properties the township probably shouldn't preserve, that has no history, has no real value, except being a windfall of cash for people that people in the township don't even know what's there. There's no history behind it except a piece of ground. So that being said, it's a problem, and we have to pay the fees associated for that. So I guess my question is, and I think at the last meeting I presented it to the lawyer, a lot of people in Worcester have donated assets over the years to the Historical Society. Are these items cataloged, and can they be sold? I think you had some people associated with you, with your Historical Society in the past few years that got their hand caught in the cookie jar regarding things within the township. And I guess my question to you is, can items that people have donated to the Historical Society be sold for cash? How's that prevented?
I'm sorry, I have a little hearing issue.
How can the items in your possession, if you need money, not be sold? Is there any kind of regulations? Is it the board that makes that decision? Just like, how many people were involved in the decision to sell the Dutchy Church?
The board,
The board.
yes.
So the board has the power to make the decisions of the assets that you guys hold over there. So if there's an antique coat from the Revolutionary War that's 200 years old, and you guys want to sell that, that's possible by the board voting on that?
Well, certainly we put very heavy restrictions on anyone who wanted to buy it, and anyone, the 3 or 4 people who came forward and actually put down deposit money. I mean, you can't change the facade, whatever. In fact, we specifically priced it so that using comparatives in the township, because 5 of the one-room schoolhouses are now houses, okay, and they are, again, that 30 by 40 footprint. Then you've got the one on Burke's Road, which is the Herolite Mennonite Church. That is also 30 by 40 foot. So we thought we would come up with a price where people who would want to really preserve this, okay, would be willing to. And we had people who signed off on that. Going back from what you're saying, this was probably a mistake on our part, and I'll admit that. We probably should have approached you guys first. But again, I mean, from what we had in the past, it was just, you know.
20 years is a long time.
Well, yeah, but history's a long time too, so.
Well, point well taken, but I think be honest, as a board member, I sit here and say, we got to look at property being preserved and things we need to do. I'm disappointed there wasn't an outpouring of support on your behalf from the people that come here on a weekly, monthly time frame saying we need to spend more money on open space, we need to preserve this, preserve that. There was no communication with the board regarding the sale of this property. So my next question, it's none of my business, but we buy the building, what happens to the 170s, whatever the price is? What do you do with that money?
Well, I've already spoken to the board about this. We would like to return part of it, okay? Because the board has to agree to this, but I've already talked about that. The one thing that has held us up, the one reason we can't keep up with the deterioration, okay?
I fully
Simple as that.
understand, from getting volunteers.
Yep.
And just getting help in general. And once again, that's a township, to me, it's a township asset. And to me, it's a no-brainer that we have the staff, we have the people. And once again, it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money within Worcester. They pay taxes and for different purposes, and that's something, to me, where it should go. It's been preserved for a long time to keep in a township. I think when we discussed it as a board, you're going to put certain restrictions on how to do this and how to do that with the building.
When we were going to sell it to an individual,
Right.
yes.
We, the township, sold the property that belonged to Bethel Hill, the pastor's house on the right-hand side going down Skippack Pike. It's right before the development, right past the quarry. And the township was going to make the people who bought that put it back to the time the house was built. Windows, doors, the whole frame. It didn't go very far. You can't make the person do that. I think he bought the windows at Costco. So it certainly wasn't time sensitive as far as the homes. And at the time, I said, when the township has the ability to start selling assets for the township, everything's available. This building's available to sell. So I guess, not annoyed with you, but I'm annoyed at the whole situation within the township, the things we try to preserve, that one of the treasures was offered to someone on the outside. You can ask them to keep it the way it is, but this buyer may agree to it, but he may decide to move to Florida next year, and he sells to the next person. So I don't think this thing can be transferred from person to person. It's just thinking down the road. What are the consequences for the sale of something with that magnitude of history that you showed there? So I agree with you. I think it'd be nice to turn the money back to the township because we give you that building over there for $1 a year.
Yes,
So,
well, we take very good care of it, too.
and they take very good care of it. So that's something that, if you run into an extra money, the township can recoup their money possibly by charging rent on that property. So it's just something that, it's all the taxpayers' money, either one way or the other. So I think we like to work with you, to work with Sean in the future to figure some way to work some of these communication problems out. And I think that saying that it didn't work 20 years ago, I think new boards, new people, new ideas, new people moving in the township. But I feel your pain trying to get volunteers. I certainly know that. And I'd like to see it restored to the way it was and become a gem like it once was back in the 1976, 78, where the people who were really involved in the organization, much like your father and all his friends,
Yes.
that took great pride in the property. So I think I appreciate the work they've done in the past, and I'd like to see that go forward for your father's legacy and other people involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I enjoyed the story. I think it's a great day we could build this relationship and keep this going. And as far as anything that the historical side, maybe the township could have a first right of refusal of anything being sold that's historical. So I think it's great that we're doing this, and I think that if we just keep the communication open, that, everything will work. Because we're getting along and everything, and if we put the right documents together, I think, this could continue for years and years and years.
Okay.
So do we need a motion on this?
Well, Wendy's going to give us a little bit of context, and then we'll keep moving forward. Thank you, Jim.
So my office has prepared a draft of an agreement of sale between the township and the Historical Society that would provide for the township to purchase the property. The purchase price is $159,000, and the agreement does have a period, a due diligence period, during which the township can investigate the property, have a environmental investigation done, and determine if, in fact, the township finds it suitable and wishes to proceed with the transaction. So during that 90-day due diligence period, should something unsatisfactory to the township be uncovered, or really for any reason the township could elect to terminate the agreement of sale, in which point the deposit money would be returned, and the transaction would not move forward. So it is obviously up to you gentlemen whether you wish to authorize to move forward with the agreement of sale, but we do have a document drafted.
Right, and just to sort of reiterate, I mean, the mechanics of it is there's obviously interest in acquiring the property, and this gives us sort of the dotting the i's, crossing the t's to make sure that, as you would in sort of any real estate transaction, in terms of that there's nothing sort of outside and unique in that regard. Does any board member want to sort of offer some thoughts and ideas, and then we'll entertain a motion if we get to that?
Yeah, I guess it's like washing money. I mean, I shouldn't term washing money, but I think we want to acquire the property no matter what. I mean, if it's contamination and stuff on there, I think it's part of the history. That's you know, we're buying history, and I think that's important to that. And if it's going to cost money to go and do these studies, environmental studies, I think no matter what shows up, I personally would vote to buy it as is. It's just, I don't think we need a lot of looking into what's happened. I don't think it's been used for anything except a church. They weren't doing chemicals and processing, manufacturing certain things in that building. I don't know what they made in the basement. Maybe they were making things in the basement 150 years ago, but if maybe it dripped down to Bert's property, we don't have that problem. So, I'm ready to move forward with it.
Right.
If you guys think we need to do an environmental study or something else to slow the process down.
Just one point of order. The environmental study, as I understand it, Mr. Quigley, is a requirement for municipalities before they purchase property. So while there are multiple phases of it, I believe we are only doing what is minimally required, a phase 1 environmental study.
I always love dealing with the government. They have, you know.
Lou, do you have any thoughts?
I'm going to agree with Steve, and I think I'll make the motion that we move forward and approve the agreement of sale and whatever we have to do for the due diligence to move forward.
Sean, just a question. What's environmental study going to cost us?
I don't know. I can look into that.
Yeah, once again, it's like all the other fees. Personally, I'm tired of the government getting into everybody's business. You know, it creates money for people, jobs for people. So, yeah, I understand it has to happen, but
Yeah, this is an unfunded mandate, I guess you could call it. I mean, we're required to do this as a prerequisite of purchasing this property.
okay. Just, yeah, I understood. We have to follow the legal laws that the government sets up, that we have to dot the i's and cross the t's. So, whatever we have to do,
Will you second the motion?
I'll second the motion. Thank you.
Okay. So certainly I support it as well, but it has been moved and seconded, so this is the opportunity for public comment. Is there any public comment regarding the motions on the floor? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Once
Wendy.
again, thank you for the effort you put in, you know, to get people to help. Thank you for thanking my father. I met him many times over with Robbie Rothenberger. He was just.
Well, I sat on, you remember, we had a historic structures committee about 15 years ago. And one of the real challenges was, how do you make people do things they maybe don't want to do? And at the end of the day, you've said it many times, is sometimes you just have to buy it. You know, you can't make somebody else do it. You end up sometimes having to acquire the property to keep it and do it the way that you would like to do it. And this is an opportunity to do that. But that was certainly one of our challenges with that particular committee, was that you couldn't enforce in a way, if somebody wanted to maintain a property a particular way, they could, but it was very hard to sort of put that mandate on somebody if they didn't want to with their particular properties. Okay, so moving forward, next up we have, and make sure I got my place right, we are at ordinance 2023-01, which is going to be an ordinance to authorize the solicitor to prepare and advertise an ordinance for the Methacton School District to hire school crossing guards. So, Wendy,
That is as a result of, if you may be aware, there was a zoning application filed to permit student parking at the Seventh-day Adventist, sorry, I couldn't quite remember the name, Seventh-day Adventist Church. That zoning hearing was held, I guess, a few weeks ago now, and the zoning hearing board did, in fact, grant zoning relief to permit student parking at that property. And one of the conditions of the zoning relief would be that the school district would be able to hire a crossing guard to provide crossing guard services there for students. And because of that, the way the second-class township code is structured, the township has the authority and is entrusted with advertising an ordinance creating the crossing guard requirement. However, the school district will be solely responsible for the cost of that crossing guard. So this would be authorization for our office to prepare that ordinance, and then it would be advertised and adopted at a later date. But again, the cost would be borne solely by the school district for the crossing guard salary, training, all of those things.
Wendy, question for you. If the school district wouldn't go ahead and, I guess, approve the crossing guard, could Mr. Betts volunteer to be the crossing guard at no cost? He doesn't start, the garage doesn't open until 9 o'clock, so I think it'd be.
Fire police would probably be a better.
I'm not sure. There's probably, I'm sure there's some background checks and some other things we'd want to make sure everybody would pass. No, I'm just teasing. I don't know the answer to that off the top.
I mean, he has a truck with a yellow light on, you could use that there as well.
I like that snowplow truck. Huh?
I can actually speak to that. So we have, we do anticipate there's going to be a brief period of time where, because the ordinance has to be advertised for a period of 60 days and the date school is going to start, that there will be a gap in the beginning of the school year where they will not have the legal authority yet, to hire a crossing guard. So we have discussed utilizing the Worcester Fire Police as a temporary solution during that period of time.
Sean, is that part of their
Conditions.
conditions that they're allowed to
Yes.
do that within?
So, yes, correct. So in order for the church to use that parking area for student parking, they must have a crossing guard there. If they don't have a crossing guard, they don't have the zoning relief to use that for parking for any other purpose but their congregation.
Would the school district be willing to make a donation to the Worcester Township Fire Police for their services? Because
Yes, in these discussions leading up to this, that was the understanding, is that it would be paid service.
I mean, those folks are always having hoagie sales and cookie sales and all kinds of sales to benefit the organization. I think the school district, due to the time frame, because we've been working on this for a year and a half, and they're the ones that just simply dropped the ball, that maybe they could make a contribution. I don't know if it's legal or not, but I think it's something that apparently they have a lot of money over there. Everyone's getting raises, so
Yeah, I
think they
can
could pay
float the idea.
the fee for that.
I'd like to make it a condition that if the school doesn't fulfill their obligation, that the fire police could be called instantly or in advance to fulfill that. So you're going to say the school decides, well, you know, it's like a school resource officer. If he's sick that day, oh, none of the kids can park there. It's just a bigger can of worms with the school every time you turn around, and I don't trust David Zerby for anything.
So we can't place additional conditions on the zoning hearing board's decision, but,
All right.
yeah.
So what I will say, Lou, is, first off, I want to thank you for sort of spearheading this endeavor for the last several months, for sure. And the parking at the school was an issue, is an issue. This is one more piece that we were able to, as a board, assist with. And for those who have attended some of the meetings earlier in the spring, it was an ongoing problem, and we were trying to get this particular piece and some other pieces worked out that we had some authority to do. I mean, a lot of the pieces we don't have authority to do. It's a school district problem ultimately. And Steve, you commented a few months ago that parking at high schools is, you know, a nationwide problem. You know, as kids get older, younger, if you will, you get more and more drivers, and you just ultimately, they're landlocked over there. And we've helped them in a couple of ways. You know, we've helped with striping over there to make it more safe around Anvil Drive. We helped sort of spearhead getting a parking area designated within the school, and this is another piece where we're allowing for some additional parking. I don't know that it'll solve it all, but I think we've sort of taken a burden on some things that ultimately weren't our burden to take on, but I'm glad we could do it. This is one more piece of it, Lou. I understand your hesitation and concern with.
Well, I mean, I participated, went through the whole school system with my son, and I mean, if I sat through the zoning, and the testimony that was given is the school and the church have had a great relationship for a long time, since the mid-'70s, as one person said. The notices that I got here that, and he admitted on June 6th of this year, when I confronted him, I said, do the people of Anvil Drive need 43 cars in front of their house? Did he deserve that? You're causing this. And I pushed him, and he finally admitted that he filed the complaint with the township because he didn't give me a real definite answer, but again, there's 3 notices. One's May, one's June, July, and they're fining a church $500 a day because they're not of this.
Well, if I can jump in,
Oh.
frankly, that's water under the bridge at this point. That's why the matter got to the zoning hearing board. The zoning hearing board proceedings have gone ahead, and now the zoning relief has been granted, so there will not be citations of that type.
No, I
this is
agree.
the end story
I'm
here.
just trying to put my point across that the church has always worked with the school. This off-street parking 150-154, whatever, originated with him, and it caused how many thousands of dollars in disruption of people's lives, and now it took 7 months to get to a zoning board for an attorney to get his act together. And now we're finally moving forward, but I don't trust him. I don't trust him anyway. You look at it, he's going to throw something in the thing, and these kids are going to be back on Anvil Drive and back at Chadwick across the street. So I think we got to really, really watch this one closely.
Yeah, Mr. Betts, I think, I feel your frustration, as well as Mr. DeLello, because when the taxpayers of the township come to us with a problem, we heard their complaints, we felt their anguish, we saw the problems of the parking on the street, we saw the safety issues. We did our due diligence very quickly. We researched the problem. We came up with our decision, what needed to be done. It was a school district, and we urged the people, they came here to complain, go to the school district, hold them accountable. This is not a township issue. But I think the board, under Mr. DeLello's leadership, following with Mr. Betts, pushed the school district, hey, we got to get this done. You have to look at this situation. It's a safety issue of the children within Methacton district, but it was never really a township issue. It's a school district issue that they didn't work on. So, like to hold the school district accountable, the school board, you know, once again, they're like we. You knock on the door, hey, my name is Harry, I'm running for school board, I'm running for this position. Okay, when there's a problem arises, they have to take care of it. And the school district fell down on the job. They just didn't do it. They had other issues they were dealing with, which I understand, but from a public safety, we have to address those issues within the township, and I think that's what we're trying to do. But as it's been pointed out before, You have to follow the letter of law that's been set up by the government, that we just can't say, okay, we grant it today, it can be done tomorrow. We have to follow the policies and the law and regulations, as Wendy's pointed out to us. So I certainly feel your frustration, Mr. Betts, but, you know, we have to do what they say. But I think if the letter's drafted by Mr. Brandt when he comes back, to once again expedite this matter and hold them accountable for their actions, I think it may help them push this along.
So from our standpoint, Lou, us authorizing this step puts the clock to them. You know, so we're good that way, but we got to make a motion, we got to pass it, and we got
I'll make
to push
a
it.
motion. We did everything we could do to help this situation because it impacted the residents, so. I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance
2023
3-01
Right now is authorizing my office to prepare the ordinance.
to prepare the ordinance under ordinance 2023-01, school, hire a school crossing guard
And advertise.
and advertise it.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Wendy. So it has been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Jim?
Jim Malik, Worcester. What was this about the $500 fine and complaints? What is that?
David Zerby admitted to me on June 6th of this year that he filed the complaint for the students, for whatever goofy reason he had in his head, to the past township manager, that notice of violation of the assessment of fine because of the ordinance 150-154, location of off-street parking. I think he created this, and I think the township manager of the past worked with him to make sure these kids couldn't park across the street. Now, in his brain, he felt that it was not safe for the kids to walk 24 feet across the road, but it was safer for them to walk a quarter mile from Anvil Drive, up Germantown Pike, through people's backyards off Anvil Drive, across, I've watched it too, across from Chadwick. I watched it at the end of the day, I was there, and the kids were walking across Germantown Pike and parking. And
I get it 100%. My question is, who filed the complaint to who?
David Zerby.
To who? The township?
Correct.
About what?
I'm going to get Sean to research that. I just have the copies of the notice of violations that were sent to the church.
Because your lawyer just said water under the bridge. What's that about?
Well, she wants to
Saying that
move
those
forward.
violations were issued
Seven
quite a while ago.
What violations?
22, it wasn't that far ago.
What,
Those are notices of violation that were issued by the former township manager to the church because there was student parking occurring on the church property.
okay, so students are parking at the church but shouldn't have been, and then there was a complaint filed by Dr. Zerby?
I have no idea.
That is what he told me, David Zerby. I don't give him that term. He's
And
superintendent.
so that's in the transcript, is that what you're telling me?
I got these emails from Sean from history because I wasn't on the board back then, but I was on the board back then when these were issued. Again, I had no knowledge of that. I just don't understand, Jim, what's going on, because
It doesn't, you're telling me that Zerby's filing complaint against his
did.
own students?
he filed a complaint with the township that the church is in violation of 150, 154 off-street parking, and it goes on to a little paragraph there, because he felt it was unsafe for the kids to park and walk across the
Do
street.
you have backup material on that I can get under right to know?
I'd have to look if you file the request.
That's just, sounds totally ridiculous to me. I mean, I'll have to go look into it myself. The reason I'm up at the microphone is that I was at the meeting where they approved $10,000 for a crossing guard over at Methacton,
Okay.
right? So what you could do, if there's some kind of a gap, you could get the school district to pay for your fire police
Right.
to do that. Either they take it out of the 10 grand, or they authorize, whatever,
Use of the
couple
money.
$1,000. They got a $3 million surplus.
I know.
They got plenty of money to take care of that problem. So if you're worried about your fire police and getting them paid, either take it out of the 10 grand already allocated, or say, hey, guys, pony up for this because everything got delayed.
So just to comment, that is essentially the understanding now, is that they would have to pay for this, or they would have to wait to utilize that
Right.
zoning relief until
Right.
a crossing guard is available.
And they can either take it out of the 10 grand that they approved, or they can just approve another couple grand.
Makes no difference to me, yeah.
I'm with you.
I mean, I think we should be notified if something happens in the glitch, because our fire police are welcome, they're volunteers. One of them lives on Anvil Drive, they'll
Listen,
do it.
man, I'm with you. First of all, the fire company shouldn't be paying for them to be there. The school district paying them
I agree.
to be there. So, all right, thanks.
It's a Band-Aid on a parking situation, but I mean, I can't believe that, and again, he used it for his own purpose for the school bus drivers. So he used it, and then when there was a football mom that got involved and striped it, he didn't like her, so they had a conflict, and that's when that complaint filed. Because I was at the high school back then.
It makes no sense to
It
me
doesn't.
why the superintendent files a complaint
Yes, he
because
did.
kids are parking where they had been parking
Oh,
for a while.
And you want icing on the cake? So there's no parking on Preble Mill. So when they have a baseball game, everybody's parking on Preble Mill, and the church. But that's okay. But when the students want to use it, we file a complaint. So this guy just, I don't know what
Well,
fiefdom he's living
the
in.
school board, when they were passing this motion, one of the school directors wanted the church to pay half
Yeah, okay.
of the crossing guard.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, they're doing them the favor by letting them use the property, so. You
None of this
don't,
makes
look, we don't have any argument about what's going on over at the school at this point.
Jim, I think when we three sitting here, when we see a problem, all being business owners, you make decisions, and we're not used to going around and take 2 months, 3 months, 5 months. You see a problem, fix it, and that's what we try to do. I think much like the church came up under Mr. DeLello's leadership, he pushed it through very quickly, this whole thing with Jim, seeing his problem there and understanding what happened. You know, it didn't take us months to sit back and say, oh, do this and that.
Believe me, I was at the meetings when all the Friends of Windtree were here. Rick was, superb. I'm baffled by the superintendent filing complaints against his own students. I got to get that info.
He did it, it was a verbal, because after I took a ride, went down there, I couldn't go down the lot because there was a propane truck coming at me on June 6th. I just remember the day, because it's D-Day, it's historical day, but anyway, it was June 6th, I pulled down that road, I had to stop. I couldn't go down the road, there's 43 cars on the other side.
I get it.
Jim, instead of beating this thing to death, there's something called a right-to-know request.
Yeah. No, that's why I just
can
asked.
fi-
I
You
asked
can
Sean-
file that, and
I asked Sean whether he had the stuff, so I'll spare you
We'll
guys.
talk soon.
Right.
Thank you, Jim. Does anybody else have any public comment regarding the motion that is presently on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question.
go, was that again? Regarding cross, yeah, okay, go ahead.
So we had a motion.
Yep.
Now it moved and seconded. I call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next up we have, you're going to need to put in for overtime, Wendy. I can't believe that Bob,
Ask Sean to help.
maybe
Yeah,
Sean.
I was.
So you're going to take this one? Okay, so we've got, this is going to be authorization for the solicitor to prepare and advertise an ordinance with regard to updating certain speed limits. So Sean, you get this one.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. So we have ordained in our township many speed limits on township-owned roads. Occasionally, we will update that ordinance. In this case, there's 3 roads that we are proposing changes to. The entirety of Landis Road between, that would be 73 and Pot Shop. Excuse me, Creble Mill between Water Street and Fawn Drive, and Hollow Road between Mill and 73. Landis Road in particular, we are proposing now to coincide with this year's road program. We've had a traffic study performed on Landis that is proposing a variety of traffic safety improvements that will, among other things, add delineator lines on the edges of the roads for pedestrian traffic, and to, a number of traffic improvements to reduce the speed as you approach the dip in the road nearing the bridge. So that is the main impetus for having it on this agenda tonight. We may discover that there are other roads or sections that we indeed wanted to change the speed limit with. Right now, we have the traffic engineer performing or gathering data rather, to determine specifically where on Hollow and Kriebel Mill we could authorize a 35 versus 25 mile per hour speed zone. But in all of these scenarios, it will either be 35 or 25 miles per hour. On Landis, the entirety of that road will be 25 miles per hour.
Thank you, Sean. And just so I understand just the mechanics of this, Wendy, when we're authorizing you to advertise the ordinance, is it then going to come back to us to pass the ordinance?
Correct. I skipped the important part. So we have to advertise this for 60 days, and then within 7 days of passing it, advertise it again. Within that 7 days, folks will be let know they can come here and speak their piece about the ordinance.
Gotcha. Any questions, anybody on that?
Yes, sir.
You don't have anything?
Pardon, Rick?
We have, the speed limit is what, currently 35, and you're reducing it to 25?
On Hollow and Kriebel Mill, they're unmarked.
They're unmarked.
Which is, I think could be potentially confusing because while some might consider that residential, other might consider that rural, and an unmarked sign could then mean 25 or 55. The township has the right to sign any residential street a 25 mile per hour. However, speaking with some of the residents along Hollow Road, it seems like their desire is for a 35, and driving that road pretty frequently, I think that would be more appropriate for most of the stretches of that road. That said, the traffic engineers will do their data collection and determine if the warrants are there for a 35 versus a 25 mile per hour zone.
I'm good. You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
So I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-02 to authorize the solicitor to prepare and advertise an ordinance to update the certain speed limits. And
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Jim?
Jim Malik again, Worcester. Is John Diesel getting his speed table?
So I spoke with Mr. Diesel, and he provided him a copy of the traffic study mentioned that is proposing all of these improvements. There is, and we used, I think, 3 different terms, John and I, in the discussion, and we settled on parabolic rise, I believe, was the term that he was proposing. When I took that term back to our traffic engineer, they confirmed that, yes, a parabolic rise, speed hump, speed table, all 3 are not warranted for this. However, they recommended basically what is a audible strip, like a rumble strip that would go across it, and striping leading up to that that would realistically lead one to believe that they're about to hit a speed hump, probably. I can't really describe it well, but if you look at the traffic report, you'd probably recognize similar traffic features like this that sort of cause you to like slow down and sort of stay in your lane as you approach a hazard. And then the audible strip would cause a noise inside the vehicle passing by that would not be heard likely outside of it, but that feature is also removable.
Did you tell him that?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said essentially that he likes it if he can't hear it. That would be the neighbor's response as well, to which I responded, it's removable. So, I mean, it's a feature that if it's purchased as a part of this, could be installed and removed at times of the year when we believe traffic might be more problematic, or when we believe there might be more pedestrian traffic going down that road, just to kind of add a safety feature to it.
Right, because I'm bringing it to your attention for 2 reasons. One, for your benefit, because If he doesn't get this thing, it's not right, he's gonna come in here with all the parts of the car.
I got to see
trashed
the
in his
parts
front yard,
finally.
and dump them on the table.
Yeah, I got to see, when I went out to Mr. Diesel's house, nice guy, by the way. I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. He still had the car parts he showed me. We saw the
gonna
severed
bring-
iron
He's gonna bring him
line.
in. He's gonna bring him in and dump him on the table. And number two is for his benefit, he's gonna have a stroke. So, you know, if you try to get that one right.
Yeah, as we met, he seemed satisfied with
Good.
the offering.
Good,
so.
good.
And Jim, once again, it's been a long time coming from Mr. Diesel.
I know.
I mean, I thought he'd have a heart attack here a few times, or his blood vessels would pop, one or the other.
I know.
So, but once again, we want to do these things, but we're constrained by the legal obligations and the professionals that do business with us. We'd like to help everybody out as best we can. That's why we sit here to do that. But we're constrained. It may not be what he wants, but at least we're trying in the right direction.
I get it. Thanks.
Jim,
Thank you,
stay there.
Jim.
You're going to want to comment on the next thing.
Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we have other business. Does any board member wish to bring any other business before the board?
Mr. Chairman, as I'm sitting here talking about Creba Mill Road, I'll go back to something that started about a year and a half ago with the other side of Creba Mill Road with the bridge that's been out. And I think we have some information that the previous manager started with, and I think that we need to take that into consideration. I think we were given 3 options by the people that did the engineering study for the bridge that's been out for about 30 years. And it's something under the previous administration that never wanted to move on it, but I think we're committed to being proactive within some things within the township. So I'm just not sure, we put that on the agenda for next month to discuss it openly, or does it have to be discussed openly, or how do we go about that?
So there's a couple things. One was that we earmarked it for budget, because certainly some of those items would be capital in nature. So we're coming into the budget season, which starts in September, and Sean has been nice enough to be nudging us about different projects. So I think that's certainly a perfect dovetail to make sure that that's part of those discussions, so that we, I mean, 2 things. One is that we budget appropriately, and the other is Lou has brought up, there's grant opportunities and potentially, and those typically take time as well. So sort of starting the steps to get any grant applications in place for that, because certainly, as you said, we had the meeting 2 years ago. It took them a year to get the memo back to us with some different options, and now we can finally sort of put that on the table to get into the budget and get into the capital sort of process, and that still takes time, but at least we're moving the thing along.
Well, once again, the wheels of justice move slowly. The wheels of this stuff moves very slowly. But to the people that have asked us about this for 2 decades, we're moving on it. And once again, our hands are being tied up by certain regulations, certain budgeting processes, but it's something we're moving forward on. Another things on our checklist we want to get accomplished. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else have any other business?
I do, and
Okay.
just a follow-up on that bridge thing, and it all started with Jim's comment way back in the day over the bridge over the River Kwai. And that's the bridge, and I've spoke with the state rep, and we're gonna get grant money and pay like 80% of that or 85% of that bridge. So we're not really gonna fund a whole bunch of money of that, so. And we have some stormwater projects. I got a couple pet peeves. I wanna get some things that are 25, 30 years old that need attention. And again, the state rep will work with us on grants. That's that, so I'll cover that. But my other pet peeve, and is I just want to read this, and it's, a letter was sent to Zerby shortly, long ago, and at this point, the board may consider an ordinance which may repeal the parking on Crable Mill Road in front of the school, which may alleviate some of the parking on Anvil Drive. The board would repeal this ordinance number 211, found in a section 145-2, but I believe this is actually a different number, but I think that we can always reinstall the parking, but I think that removing just in front of the school on the grass side would be a good idea, because come September, you're gonna advertise this, and then you're gonna go through the process, and these kids are not gonna park there in September. I'm sorry, they're just not gonna be able to do it. With the legal process, it's gonna slow it down, so I don't know the legal end of this, but I think we could repeal it, and that takes 60 days. I can't believe this is this hard. We can't get kids to park to go to school. I mean, it's amazing how slow this process works. But I've been working on this for 7 months, and we just can't get agreement with the school. And I'm like, all right, well, he doesn't own the road. So that was done back in the day. So you could put 30, 40 cars along the side. It wouldn't affect anybody. From 7:30 to 2:30 when they get out, them kids will be going out of them cars before them buses even hit that road. So I believe it's a good idea to follow through with our initial, I believe, obligation to the residents, because it's not a safety issue. And then again, if and when, and hopefully this church and the parking crossing guard works, maybe we reinstall the no parking signs on Creekland Road. But we got to do something. We just can't go through another 6 months of kids walking through backyards and up Germantown Pike, and I don't trust David Zerby for 2 feet. I'm sorry.
It's duly noted.
Thank you, and I want a second on that. So if you want to give it to me, give it to me. If you don't, well, it's been so noted in the minutes, I hope.
Understood. Any other business?
Another item is across the street. Nothing's really come before the departments for across the street. There's been a lot of talk about what's happening on the opposite corner. We haven't seen a plan a couple of years,
Correct.
I guess. So nothing has happened. There's a lot of conversation about what's going on over there. We, the board, have no idea. Nothing's been really presented to us from the builder. There's issues going on between the two parties. We're not involved in that, but be assured that when the issues come up, we'll address the situations regarding that project, if in fact they even started due to other outstanding problems, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so the environmental issues, Steve, the DEP is working with the property owner, and is also the Montgomery County Conservation folks are involved, because there was some additional, there was some movement a few months ago that was part of their cleanup process, and we're sort of outside of that, and then they sort of started clearing some area before they sort of had all the right pieces in place. So residents have expressed concern, we've expressed concern. We know the township manager is sort of actively keeping an eye daily, making sure that there's nothing going on over there that shouldn't be going on, and ultimately it has to go through a whole environmental process. And to your point, before it hasn't even gotten to a land plan in front of us that we can even see what's going on there, other than we're certainly watching it as closely as everybody else and are concerned about it, but we are limited in terms of what we can do until it gets to us.
And once again, I'll bring this subject up, Mr. Chairman, because some people do look at the meetings online. I think there's been some criticism of the Board of Supervisors regarding the new project on Skipback Pike. If you want to address the project of the 14 homes
Sure.
by right situation.
Yes, so if you've started working your way up and down Skipback Pike a couple of weeks ago, so a lot of earth started moving very rapidly, and there was some concern regarding that particular development, which was a by right plan by the property owner. And by right means that ultimately they were allowed to do that under our current zoning and ordinances today. That the zoning allows for them for it's 14, Sean, correct? Is that the correct number? The property allows, the space allows for 14 under our current zoning. We did not provide them any unique relief. We did not provide them any sort of special treatment. They just passed through process as it's written in our ordinance and zoning today. But ultimately, there was nothing unique to that particular 14-home subdivision, and the resident, all of a sudden it pops out on Skipback Pike, and you think, wow, where did that come from? But ultimately, it's pushing back in that area, and there's a lot of, surprisingly amount of land to, 30 some odd acres to cover the 14 homes that are ultimately going to go there.
Mr. Chairman, another issue is the golf course development. I'm hearing from residents in the township that live in the development below, the amount of traffic that golf course has pushed onto the township road or to Skipback Pike. We had the traffic engineer can do all the studies, and from all the studies, they said about the traffic patterns, it wasn't a concern. I'm in that development probably 3 to 4 times a week in the morning, and I sit across the street. And I can tell the people, I encourage them that are complaining about the traffic that that development's pushing on the Skippack Pike or the surrounding road, go inside the development and watch how many people leave there 7 to 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning. I think a lot of those people work from home. They may drive to the edge of the road to put their kids on a school bus, but there's not an onslaught of traffic going out on the Skippack Pike. Of the hundreds of times I've been at development in the morning, looking around, I very seldom, if it's 200 times, no more than 5 times I sat behind a car leaving that development going to the road. I'm not sure when they leave. Maybe they were all work at night, the third shift someplace, but based on the value of those homes, I don't think so. So I think that the engineer and the professional people that work for the township did their due diligence, recommended to us. We sort of had some questions about it, but I said I can verify personally by sitting in that development and watching the traffic patterns. I just never see any cars coming out on the road.
Right, and you see the traffic engineers, it's science. I mean, we don't believe it until it happens in practice, but ultimately they've come before. And we've seen it when they've talked about the number of trips that might happen or the number of, we see with the school, with the number of students that might get produced with certain types of housing and those sorts of areas. But the engineers are typically right, and we're seeing here that there certainly was concern to what that might do to that area, and it just hasn't, the concern has not come to fruition. At the end of the day, the engineers were correct.
I will say there is a traffic problem within the town, in that development, with all the people walking their dogs in the morning.
we
They
have
walk
a
their dogs,
yes.
they don't drive their cars, that I see.
We have a similar problem. So COVID produced 9,000 dogs in my neighborhood. So we have, certainly dog walking has become a thing in my neighborhood that we didn't have that problem 5 years ago, but we now have a dog walking problem.
Do we have a dog catcher?
We do not, and I'm not recommending that we put one in place.
More people work from home, and
Yeah.
they have home offices in these homes, and there's no need for them to invade the streets in the township, and I think that's what's happening.
Right. You are correct. So we're good with other business. We do have one more public comment. If anybody else would like to make any public comment before the board, now is the time. Bill?
Apologize. I didn't think we'd have this good of a turnout. I'll have something for everybody. More of a
Thank you.
complaint session.
Really?
All right, thank you.
Bill McRain, Stump Hall Road. What I handed out to everyone who didn't get a handout was something Jim and I talked about on Saturday morning when I visited the museum during the open house period, which is what, Jim, twice a month? Yes. Twice a month. The township, we've had problems with spotted lanternflies, we've had ash trees, we've had elm disease, we've had a lot of things. And I just wanted to bring this to the attention, no real complaints with the township per se, townships being afflicted the same as the rest of us property owners, that there's a invasive species that people confuse with milkweed because of the monarch butterfly hosting that milkweed does. And there's other species in that family that are poisonous to people, animals, particularly livestock. And as someone who has livestock, this is problematic for me. I've got started my property on a 3-year eradication system with PMAC, the local ag company that I use. Steve probably has someone else, but you can go to any corner in the township, and if you're sitting there at a light, you probably see some of this dog bane nearby. And what I didn't realize was just how dangerous it was to people until I started doing weed whacking around my property. And at the end of the day, I was like, man, I feel like crap. And it's likely that I was getting the fluids from the plants all over me and ingesting it, inhaling it. And we've got it in Hebner, we've got it at Nike, we've got it out the window here, we got it at my house, we got it at my neighbors, we've got it down in Evansburg State Park. And it's just something that we should maybe look at each as individual property owners and see what little part we can do, because it's invasive and it's, if you look around now, if you see what it is and you look it up and drive home, as I said with Jim, you'll see it on every roadside here. And no answers, I'm just wanting to raise that awareness.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board tonight? Christine?
Christine Steer, Baton Road. Steve raised a good point about residents going and looking at the minutes and going online. And I couldn't be here last month because I had a work commitment, and I went to look online, and I actually noticed there's quite a few minutes and videos from this past year that aren't on the website. So I'd ask if, it's incumbent upon the supervisors to, keep the business of the township, open for the residents to consume. And I found that. The other issue I've noticed in the past year or so, the township used to do a sneak peek of the week, like there used to be some social media presence, there used to be an email blast about the things upcoming. And on your website, it says stay informed, and there's like a Facebook emoji and Instagram and Twitter. Your Instagram and your Twitter they say error if you click on them, and Facebook, it takes you to an October of 2022 posting. So I think the township could do a little bit better job in communicating with the residents. I also noticed that your packet this week, the draft minutes from the previous meeting aren't there because, like I said, I couldn't come last week. So I tried to watch the video, it's not there. I tried to look at the meeting minutes, even though I know that it's draft, you had to approve them this week. Even the draft isn't there. So I just want to, alert you to the fact that I think the township's falling down a little bit in the way of communication and letting people know about what's going on in the township. Because I know I personally use it at times. I'd like to come here in person, obviously, but I use social media. I know other people use social media and go to the website. So I just think there should be some updating with that. That's all I have. Thanks.
I can provide a couple of updates that can address that if you'd like.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, we did have two meeting videos, I think, in the past year that were corrupted and are unavailable for that reason. But more recently, we do still have the peak at the week. We send that out every Friday between 12 and 3. So what I might recommend is try signing up again. Maybe the old emails, just not getting it. But yeah, that goes out every Friday. As well, there are minutes posted in the meeting packet information. So if you click on if you go to the website, that's the first page. What says draft, those are the meeting minutes. Yeah. Okay, I can look into that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I know the peak of the week. We always get the peak of the week. I'm not sure where the updates are. And, someone else addressed the minutes with me about some of the stuff not being in the minutes. And I guess I go back to, I forget their resident's name. I'm just not sure why I can't remember that guy's name. Well, I think it was a guy addressing the minutes. And really, the minutes of the township have to list date, time, and that's about it under the letter of the law, because we were criticized, chastised about what's in the minutes and what's not in the minutes. And not that we're streamlining or we're keeping things out. And I think, as you mentioned, that's the purpose why, went to the video. It's there. We don't have to interpret what somebody said because we didn't dot an I across a T, or we didn't mention something that there was a comma after their comment, so we try to do that. In conjunction with what Sean said about some of the misfiring of the video stuff, I did see Verizon was here working on the building the other day, changing some of the lines. So I think, you know, this modern technology, we hope it works all the time, but sometimes there's faults with that as well. So I think the staff is doing a good job trying to update the infrastructure within the building the best they can do. Right. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Any other public comment for the board tonight? Seeing none, then motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.